everyone, Uncle Jessy here. What you're looking at is the brand new, well technically it's old, but it's been re-released Elegoo Neptune X 3D printer, and we're gonna be taking a look at it in today's video. And as you can see, it looks a good bit different than the standard Elegoo Neptune printer here, which is traditionally a bed slinger style printer where the bed moves back and forth while the extruder is also gonna move up and down and left and right. Well, in this case, the bed is just going to move up and down. It's not gonna go back and forth, and the extruder here along the top is gonna be able to move on the X and Y axis. And while I'm showing off all of the crazy things that I've run off and printed with this machine in today's video, I did want to mention it is not a review, since today's video is being sponsored by the folks over at Elegoo, the makers of the Elegoo Neptune X that we'll be focusing on in today's video, but they also make the Elegoo Neptune 2, 2S, which I own way too many of, and the awesome Elegoo Neptune 3, which has auto bed leveling built into it. If you're looking for an FDM 3D printer, the Elegoo Neptune series is an excellent place to get started on your journey with 3D printing. Now, the design of the Neptune X isn't the only thing that sets it apart from the Neptune 2 series of machines. The X also sports a larger build volume. Well, technically it's a taller build volume than the Neptune 2 series of machines. This is 220 by 220, so the same on the X and Y, but it's 300 millimeters tall, which means we can print some really big things. And we'll get to this print here in just a little bit, which, by the way, fits perfectly in the build volume for this machine. Would not have been able to print this on any of my other Neptune printers. And not only is it sporting a larger build volume than the other Neptune printers, it's also the first of the Neptune printers that's sporting a USB port on the front of the machine. No more micro SD cards, which honestly, I wish all of the Neptune printers were using a standard USB reader like this versus a micro SD card, which I will typically lose or get loose, just lose track of, or end up getting them stuck somewhere in the machine. This works so well. Power switch is easily accessible on the side of the machine. It's a large toggle switch that you can switch on and off. It's also a very quiet 3D printer. Compared to all of the other Neptune printers, this is easily the quietest out of all of the machines. When it's actually up in 3D printing, I don't hear anything other than the fan from the printer. It's also got the same style of UI and interface that you've seen on the other Neptune series of printers, but the difference is here, I don't know what it is, but the touchscreen interface just feels softer, squishier. I don't quite know how to put my finger on it, but it works the exact same as all of the other Neptune printers, minus the Neptune 3, which has a brand new UI and controls built into it, since it has auto bed leveling, which this unfortunately does not have. I really wish that this had bed leveling, auto bed leveling built into it, but I can say I have only leveled this the one time, and it has stayed really nicely leveled for basically everything that I've printed throughout this video. So you're gonna have the 4 adjustment knobs there on the bottom of the bed, similar to what you have with standard 3D printers. It also has a magnetic flex plate, and unlike the metal flex plates that come with the Neptune printers, this comes with a soft material that's got like a build tack-like surface on it. This works surprisingly well for getting your prints to stick as well as getting them off. Had zero issues with any sort of bed adhesion or even getting the prints off of this. Still, I might look at upgrading this and adding on a textured build plate surface like on the Neptune 2S and the Neptune 3. I should also mention the assembly process was pretty straightforward. I just followed the instructions that were in the guide. There's also video walkthrough instructions that were very helpful for later on as I was tightening up everything before I went off to 3D print anything. That's included on the USB card here with the machine. But I also wanted to mention that it was probably going to take you about 30 minutes or so to get everything assembled. So it's a little bit more involved than the standard Neptune 2 or 2S or Neptune 3 type of assembly process. And one other really kind of wild thing to me is that the bed itself is just held into place by this, basically this arm that's attached to the back of the machine that helps lift it up and down. There is a little bit of wobble in there, and I've seen online that other people have designed some bed braces that I might end up trying to print and attach to this just to see if it helps with some of that wobble. I'm not really seeing any bad artifacts with my 3D prints. However, having a more stable bed is not a bad thing in my mind. And as for the price of the machine, it's currently $330 over on Amazon and $315 over on Elegoo's website, which, by the way, I'll have links to down below. And if you happen to purchase the machine, helps out me here and the channel. Now let's talk about some of these prints already. The first thing I went off and printed was this cup can holder from Loot Studios. That's part of their July release. This allows you to take a standard size can and slide it into this cup holder, and I absolutely love this design. Everything here was printed at 0.2 millimeter layer height, and the details look fantastic off of this machine. And just for a little comparison, I also printed one on the Elegoo Neptune XS, and honestly, I can't really spot any difference between the print quality of these prints. It was using the exact same file, just one was on the Neptune XS and one here was on the Neptune X. Both look fantastic. I then went off and printed one of the latest Flexi articulation prints, T-Rex here, in this rainbow silk filament, and I ended up seeing a little bit of zits and bobs there on one side of the print, which just probably means I need to dial in my settings ever so slightly for this silk PLA. But other than that, everything printed properly, no issues with any of the articulation, and everything looks more or less pretty good. I then wanted to print something that was a little bit bigger, so I found this file over on Printables, which I've been absolutely obsessed with. I did not support this at all, so I wanted to test out some of the extreme overhangs that are in this print, and it looks okay. I probably could have done a little better job of actually supporting this here, but it's a good test to see how this would turn out. And the print details, again, all the layer lines are nice and smooth on this using this stone-like filament here from Printed Solid, which happens to be Joel Telling's, the 3D Printing Nerds filament. This is the Vanilla Bean Ice Cream filament. I then used that same filament to print a stone, but not just any stone. It's a sword for this stone, and it's not any sword. It happens to be a Sharpie pen cap holder that's part of a printables competition that's going on right now, and this is a cap cover for the actual Sharpie, and the sword itself, or the Sharpie, fits perfectly here into the stone. This is just a little fun thing that I'm going to have permanently behind me here on my desk setup. And with that said, let's talk about this massive 300 millimeter tall Braveheart sword. So this file has been designed by 3D Printing World and has made just sort of a name for himself designing a whole bunch of these print-in-place extending swords like the katanas or the lightsabers, but this is one that I've been eagerly waiting for. It's a massive broadsword style of sword like you'd see in the movie Braveheart that just is way too cool. This thing is so long. Look at this. Look at this. Oh my gosh. That is, it's got to be a little over 5 feet tall there. And why I'm so excited about this is, one, that it's awesome, and I'm going to be playing with this nonstop. I'm already a big fan of his lightsaber, which I play with all the time, but this is just one that I had been eagerly waiting for him to design and release, and it's so much fun to print, and it's just perfect for this 3D printer because all of the parts for this print need to be printed at 300 millimeter height if you're printing at the default scale. So I went through the process of printing each of these individually in vase mode, and what I ended up starting to do was the default print speed was 80 millimeters per second, and then I started upping the print speed on the machine itself after I'd been printing for about a half an hour or so, knocking up to 150% speed, 170% speed, 180% speed, and it printed just fine. So I honestly think I could take that default 80 millimeters per second and potentially up that even further with some more testing and refining of settings. And even though this isn't a review of the Neptune X, I do have some feedback from my friends over at Elegoo about what I'd like to see in the next iteration of the Neptune X, maybe the XS or maybe the X Max or Extreme, or I don't know what you want to call it. I would honestly love to see some of the improvements that were made over on the Neptune 2S make its way over to a Neptune Neptune XS, improved bed leveling knobs and springs, an updated build plate, as well as that all metal extruder. The other massive thing that I would love to see on like any new machine that Elegoo puts out is auto bed leveling. I would honestly love to see the auto bed leveling that's made its way into the Neptune 3 over to something like this. And easily my biggest request and plead to the folks over at Elegoo is make this bigger. The 300 build volume height there is amazing, but I want like a 300 by 300 by 300 or even bigger than that. I want to be able to print a full-size helmet on this printer, and honestly, with a little bit of angling, you could print a thin profiled helmet on the Neptune X here, thanks to that added build volume height, but I'd rather still have a much larger build volume so that I can do some crazy full helmet builds here. But let me know what you think about the Neptune X and its larger, taller build volume compared to the other Neptune series of printers. And if you're familiar with this style of machine and know of any good, decent mods that I should look at upgrading on this, let me know, because I'd be interested in seeing how I could tweak this one here to print even better than what I'm seeing so far. And I also want to take a minute to say thank you to all my Patreon supporters for your continued support. If you're interested in my Resin 3D printer settings as well as my support settings, you can find those over in my Patreon. I'm actually in the process of migrating some of my current profiles, which are primarily Chitubox, over to Lychee. Hey, thanks so much for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed and run out and print this sword. Oh my God, I love it. Hey, I'll see you next time. Bye now. But I am just in love with this file. This is a must print. Like, even if you have to scale this down to fit one of your machines, please run off and print this because it's so awesome to play with.